right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. A lot of feedback coming through. Let's bring that up on screen and see what you're saying. At Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. Let's bring that up and see. Kimani Kenneth says, Ruto is destroying the middle class that Kibaki built. We are now working daily not to feed ourselves, but to feed Ruto. This is slavery. Okay. J.M. Musoma says it's so sad that Treasury has removed 4.9 billion for school feeding program because government can't afford it, only to allocate DP Gachagwa's 1.12 billion to renovate his office and residence. He now seeks 200 million for more anti-drug campaigns. Warped logic. Okay? Tim says, sad that we elect leaders and they come back to make noise and waste our time in funerals, churches and barazas, yet they can work on finance bill and disaster while in parliament. Both Azimio and Kenya Kwanza have laughed off elections. Okay? Engineer Lazaro says, let's bite the bullet and tell the king he's wrong. President Ruto economics advisors and his close sycophants are misleading him on these proposed taxes. Punitive taxes would add more injury to the fragile economy by chasing, I believe he continues to say, by chasing people out of business. Gori Baraza, it seems Kenyans are not out of the woods yet. The debilitating taxes that are proposed each and every day against the already suffering common man show that there is no relief soon. The state of our nation is wobbly, shaky, and totally blurred. Sir Nixon says resistance to tax hike plans began when Ruto was deputy president, when the Tanga team was pronouncing openly and loudly their dissatisfaction of tax increases. That's when the deep-rooted opposition of the high tax narrative began. Okay? Bobo Tieno Wino says the government has no option of getting money to run its business via taxation, and even the opposition legislators knows that they shouldn't take advantage of economic hard times waiting to oppose any proposal from government. Honorable Kelo, so now what does the government do? Where should they draw the balance? Because it's true they need the collection to bridge the deficit, but also the Kenyans, some of them are complaining of the high taxation. How do you draw the balance now?
Firstly, before I come to the balance, Honorable Trevor, this is one debate that calls for a lot of patience. You listen to my brother Ken Ondiek, who was hitherto very rational in his thinking and reasoning, joined Uda and just became somebody else. So I'll have to nurse a lot of patience all through this debate. Because, for example, and this is just one of them, all that he said don't hold water, but this is one particular one that I think shouldn't go unchallenged. He says in Singapore, before one buys a vehicle, you register by 106,000 US dollars, firstly, before you buy a vehicle. Yes. That is coming to 14 million Kenya shillings. And you ask yourself, what will then be the value of that VW that you'd want to drive, for example? So I will be patient listening to him, but I want to urge our viewers to also exercise the same patience even as he speaks, because he represents no one. He's not even representing Uda here, but he's here to confuse us. But I'm glad that some of us are very, very hard to confuse. Trevor, we do talk about public participation as a matter of meeting constitutional threshold. It is not based on the fact that when Kenyans express their views, then that will be infused into a bill which will ultimately become an act of the House. A classical example, and this is very sad, that on the affordable housing bill then, which is an act now, 9,450 Kenyans presented petitions to the contrary. All these people were ignored in that hotel called Hilton Garden, where this committee sat for days on end, doing nothing but listening to those essays and trashing them at the end of the day. So when they say that whereas we have come up with a raft of measures on taxation, they are not conclusive until Kenyans' views shall be heard, I can promise you that Kenyan views will not be taken. Kenyans will not be listened to. They should only brace for tough times going into the future, because we are dealing with a regime that will never ever be proactive to the plight of the Kenyan citizenry. And this is a matter of concern. What they did, immediately they assumed office, and people always say, you know, this is done in Parliament. In Parliament. A classical example is, immediately UDA came into office, the very first thing that they did was to buy members of Parliament to cross to their side because they didn't have the numbers. Jubilee ultimately became a parliamentary house, you know, severed from Azimio coalition so that they could have absolute control of the house. So as parliamentarians and legislators, and I'm one of, you know, those people who debate issues in the house, and the Hansard will vindicate me, we present very tangible arguments and counter-arguments so that this government can do things right, but because they are buoyed by the fact and emboldened by the numbers, they just ignore them. So what do we then do as the minority of the House?
Yeah.
The rule of democracy is the minority will have their say, but the majority will have their way, and they have consistently done this. So you said we need to get into specifics around some of these things.
Yes.
And I want to bring it down.
One of them is actually this motor vehicle tax.
Correct.
And for the record,
correct,
it is true what Ken was saying. A 10-year certificate of entitlement license in Singapore will cost you $76,000 US, 104,000 Singapore dollars.
For how many years?
1600 cc.
For how many years?
That's a 10-year certificate.
Correct, yeah. Well, he said before you buy a vehicle.
3,000 cc, it's 106,000 US dollars.
Correct.
The most expensive.
He misrepresented facts.
You must have it before you have the
But now, let's
But that is a 10-year.
tax.
So
2.5.
they're proposing that motor vehicle ownership. In fact, it is based on those who own vehicles. And it cuts across all vehicles, whether it is for commercial or private. And they're challenging the insurance companies to get that money for the government. And it ranges between 5,000 shillings to 100,000 shillings, depending on the cc of your vehicle. Now, what they're essentially saying is that at the end of the year, the government, because I own a vehicle, must get 100,000. Mine will just be about 80,000 because it is a heavy CC. I'll have to pay that. Most Kenyans at 85%, and you can do your research, 85% of Kenyans do third-party insurance policies on their vehicles, third party. No third-party vehicle is subjected to valuation before they purchase insurance. You just say, that is my logbook, send me my third-party insurance. And it is 7,500 shillings, running for a whole year. Only 15% of Kenyans insure by comprehensive. And comprehensive, therefore, means valuation must be done, and that value is calculated to get, you know, the amount of money for the insurance policy. So I do not know how they are going to create a new paradigm that will now incorporate third-party policies doing valuation for our vehicles. That is first nightmare. The second nightmare is when people do third-party insurance, it is not for compensation. It is for the police to see that this vehicle is insured. By the way, Kenyans get those insurance stickers for purposes of the police. Not because an accident will occur and the third person will be compensated. No, that is not why we buy insurance. We buy it for the police. But again, ask yourself on the converse, how often do you get stopped by the police? I mean, how many policemen do we have strewn all over our roads? Paltry. So what this government is intending to do is to help us not insure our vehicles by so creating a separate revenue stream for the police officers. Because am I going to pay 100,000 shillings or 80,000 shillings, or I can give the police officer 1,000 shillings because I know the next time I will be stopped will be August next year. by a police officer. So that I just run without insurance and therefore subvert this Ruto taxation punitive measure.
Okay, let me bring in Newton and hear your views on this motor vehicle insurance tax, because we've spoken about the bread taxes, the 16% VAT. We will see what Kenyans say and we'll see how it changes, if it does at all. Now let's talk about the motor vehicle tax. Is this fair? Minimum of 5,000 shillings, maximum of 100,000 shillings.
Trevor, I think I want to say that the issue of taxation has never been easy since biblical times. In fact, because it has always been, like I said, government has to collect a revenue. And you know, the Bible tells us when Jesus was here, people thought that the worst sinners were tax collectors. In fact, people then were wondering why Jesus, being the Son of God and preaching about, you know, God was dining with tax collectors. So I must admit that this is not easy to debate because the tax collector is always branded as an enemy of the people. Yet the same people need services from government. So it's not very easy. But I think, Trevor, just to take something that Ken said, that I think we need to do more in the Houses of Parliament, and especially the National Assembly, than ventilate out there. Although we must discuss these matters. Yeah. Why I'm saying that is that Honorable Okello here and those that, of course, do not are on the minority side, anybody is allowed to sponsor an amendment or amendments to any bill. And I think what we should see from the people that are not supportive of these proposals, I think, is to propose to sponsor amendments depending on what they would want to see being done.
But we did see them proposing some amendments, and they were all thrown out. Just the other.
You know, Trevor, you also have to lobby and convince other members to support your amendment. So I think the parliamentary process must be allowed to continue. But I want to say, even before I come to the motor vehicles tax, that it is true. I think I join other Kenyans in demanding that we need to cut on expenditure on maybe things that are not very urgent and necessary for now. Because at the end of the day, we need to raise revenue, and I'll keep saying that. But where else will we raise this revenue? And I think Honorable Okello has been very smart in avoiding your question. You asked him, what are the options? Yes, these taxes are punitive. Yes, the common man is hurting, and government wants to collect revenue. I think I was listening very keenly to hear what a proposal Honorable Okello would give to us. Exactly how...
Should I?
Exactly how, you'll get your time, Honorable Okello. Exactly how will this much needed revenue be raised? Because you see, Trevor, we have doctors agitating for high pay. We have now intern teachers who all of them want to be employed on permanent and pensionable basis. And many other things. I think we need to see, right now there's a lot of damage that has been done by the floods on the roads. Everywhere you go, there are potholes, even roads that were hitherto very good. So the idea is money, revenue is needed. And we also need to protect the common man. So can we all join as Kenyans, whether we have no opposition, it's the minority side, whether from the minority side, the majority side, let's sit down because all of us are affected. Let's bring out proposals on how to raise revenue, because we need revenue. Members of parliament from all sides, of course, have been agitating for higher CDF allocations. Yeah. I mean, where do we get this money? Let us bring up ideas and say, instead of taxing this and that, this is how we can go about it to raise revenue, Trevor. So I think I'm listening to hear what Honorable Okello, what my friend Fred Okango, the options, because this is very critical. Yeah. because we cannot just criticize without offering, without offering other ideas, what can be done, because this is our country.
Okay.
I know they may want to say we are not in government, it's not our business to help government run.
I'm ready to help them now,
but
Trevor.
It's our country,
yeah.
and everybody must bring out ideas that will help.
Simple solution. Okango, let's start with you. What are the options that Azimio is putting forward?
You know, Trevor, it is not the duty of the minority
I knew he was going to
to advise the government of the day.
I forewarned you.
It is not in our place to advise them.
Yeah.
However, it is rightfully in our place to tell them what they are doing wrong. When they do something right, we'll congratulate them. And in any case, Trevor, this is our country, and I've said this before. We are not wishing for this country to go down. No. We are only telling them that there's something they're doing that is wrong. This issue of motor vehicle tax, what is called motor vehicle circulation tax, you know, other than its introduction, they have also mandated the insurer to collect and remit within 5 days upon insurance of the cover, failure to which you shall be subjected to a penalty of 50% of the amount. That is a threat in itself. Number two, this very tax has got serious implications in terms of cost of transportation that is going to be put back to the consumer of that service, the public, and even the owner of the vehicle itself. So what we are saying is that when the government of the day insists, and I'm glad that I didn't know my good friend Senator Newt is also a pastor. He has preached this morning for 2 seconds, and he says this is biblical. Well, is this biblical? The same Bible tells us, Senator Newt, that do not tax more than you can. So, look, what we know, the government must collect taxes. That's so fair. We know it is jukumu letu, ulipa ushuru kujitegemea. But you cannot overtax to burden the people. What we are complaining about as the opposition coalition party is the overtaxation. And the president himself, Trevor, has admitted on a national TV to the world and to Kenyans that in his view, and comparable to other nations or peers of Kenya in the continent, we are taxed less at 14%. He wants, by the time he leaves office in 2027, because he will be leaving this country at 22%. What does that mean? He must tax anyone, everything, and anything. That is the implication. Okay. We are telling them that for sure we are ready to be taxed as Kenyans, but don't overtax us. Why? Because the economy is not doing so well. The mama mboga has no money. The boda boda has no money. The mtu wa mjengo wa mkokoteni, they have no money. When you put tax on what they consume daily like bread, you are actually punishing them. Yeah. We're also telling them, widen the tax base. Don't target the middle class with this motor vehicle and tell them that if you don't want to pay, leave your car at home. While this is a source, not only a source of movement, but also of income to them, because they save more when they use their personal vehicle, and interestingly, you are taxing them. And lastly, Trevor, I want to repeat, you know, Kennedy Ondiek is a representative of UDA party in South Nyanza. That's what he is. And I want to ask him very interesting questions this morning. Kennedy, even home where you come from, do you strongly believe that your people are comfortable with the high taxation that Ruto is putting on them? Do you strongly believe, Kennedy, that this country is going the right direction when the media reports and give feedback from the public that they are hurting? Their belts that they were told to tighten is already cut. They don't have belt anymore, Trevor. The belt is thrown out because of taxation. So when Kennedy comes here and defends this government like it is his life, himself, he knows very well that he is also part of the people that are heavily taxed. Then I wonder what Kennedy is doing. When Kennedy tells us that our members of parliament that run away instead of debating, let me repeat what Honorable member from Okello from Nyanda said. When this government came in place, their first strategy was to force their way into majority, because they were never majority. The majority party was determined at the election, and those results are there. You know it from the registered political parties. Who are the majority? You know that. They forced their way into majority. Why? Because they were intending, Trevor, to pass these punitive taxes using numbers, because it is at Parliament, on the floor of Parliament, where decisions are made concerning the people, particularly the National Assembly. Okay. And you will be shocked to hear that they would want us to debate with them in Parliament while they have made a decision, they have mobilized their numbers, they have even taken some from us, and they have been told, this is the way to go, you like it, you like it. Kennedy Ondiek admitted they rubber stamp things in Parliament on this show. I'm not misquoting him, he said this here. He said it. So listen, what we are asking, we know we can pay taxes. We know we should pay taxes. But we are telling Mr. President that in paying taxes, let us apply ourselves to the principles of principle of public finance, equitable and must be fair. And lastly, the expenditure. Yeah. You cannot talk about taxation without talking about expenditure. Where are we expending? Are we expending money for equitable development, or are we expending money for individual development? Okay. This regime has perfected the art of expending money for individual development. Okay. And that's why you look at offices being built, cars being bought for the big boys, for their spouses. Everything is on individual level. The people of Kenya that they believe or they claim to love and protect are left on their own devices. Okay. The people are suffering, Ken, and we must tell you, and Honorable Nyutu, what we are saying is we have alternative. And this time, yesterday, when we were doing the Azimio Legislative Conference, we made a decision and a resolution that we are going to give the people of Kenya a people's budget. We will wait for them. If they don't allow the public to take their views and accommodate the views of the public, in the final decision of this finance bill, we shall come out with a people's budget and tell the people what to do next. That one is coming.
You're going to go to the streets.
I'm saying we have an alternative way of addressing the issues of concern to the people. Okay. Yes.
Which is that way?
No, it's not the only way. There are so many ways.
Which way is it?
We have so many ways. We can tell the people of Kenya, we have a budget here that is for the people. Yeah. This is what we have instructed. Yeah. No, hold on. This is what we have instructed our members, Okello and the rest, to pass. And we shall also offer solutions on all those areas that they are proposing that we feel are hurting the public. Okay. That decision will be made at the right time.
Okay. Ken, we're back on this motor vehicle tax so that we don't run all over the place. Is this a fair taxation?
I'm very sad that when a sentiment is made in such a platform, and in fact the person seated next to me decides not to actually get the sentiment as I've put it, because I've simply said that members of parliament will have a duty to debate, ventilate, and vote on these proposals. So whether that voting is rubber stamping as they claim, or it is actually passing of a bill into law, that is the duty of Parliament. Where Okango doesn't sit, I don't sit. I want to come back to, Okango has asked me whether my people are comfortable with the taxes. No one is ever comfortable with taxes. And I'm happy it has been referred to in the Bible. And Jesus had to come and say, give unto Caesar what belongs to what? To Caesar. Because people didn't want to give. Let me take you back to the Thomas Hobbesian theory of natural rights and establishment of a state. When every person was given an opportunity in the natural state to procure for themselves, for their own survival and self-reliance, some were able to procure more than the others. And that explained why there were people who were stronger and people who were weaker. And so there was a need to combine the weak and the strong so that there is a bigger power called the state to ensure all of them are taken care of. And that was the emergence of duties and rights, as I said it. And these duties come in the form of expenditure on services, because whenever someone, according to Article 28 of the Constitution of Kenya, and first indicated in Article 10 of the Constitution of Kenya about human dignity, for somebody's dignity to be preserved, that person must have services from the state.
Because the state has a duty of first managing the resources for their self-preservation.
Is the motor vehicle tax fair?
Developing, yeah, I'm bringing my point.
Let's come back to that.
Yes, you see, I'm building a point so that Kenyans can understand why they have to be taxed. So that these resources...
They agree to be taxed.
Yes, so that is why my people also, as Okango asked me, our people cannot be comfortable, but they will have to be taxed. So if you allow me execute my points, as they do...
tax fair?
It cannot be fair, and it will not be fair because Kenyans and any person in the world will never be happy to be taxed. That is a point which even the president said, that yes, people must understand that taxation is, first of all, not a punishment, but a duty. When you are given a duty, in fact, even waking up very early in the morning to be here at 5, Trevor, is not your happiness. But it's your duty to be here so that you get paid.
The reason I'm asking you this, Ken, is because you're an accountant.
Let me come back to motor vehicle.
You're an accountant.
Let me come back to motor vehicle.
Yes.
And then I bring you the aspect of motor vehicle taxation. One, when the viewer said middle class are individuals who are capable of taking care of themselves, and the government is allowing them to take care of themselves by, number one, establishing good roads for them, that middle class to go and get that income, ensuring security for them, ensuring every facility is available for them, so that they can go and make that revenue. It's not wrong if government asks of them in the purchase of their vehicles in the country, and I think, as I said earlier, our colleagues must be up to date with facts. I'm happy that you have indicated my point as to Singapore question, because Honorable Jared Ukelo looked like if I gave a wrong fact, but thank you, you have also established it. But I was coming back to give him even the facts, but now you have given it. I can tell you that for Kenyans of low level to enjoy being in Kenya, Kenyans at middle level must accept to be taxed better for the poor to survive. But those who are not, it is true. You can only tax where there is money.
You're still on the floor. Let's be practical. Yes. You said that for the Kenyans at the low level, they should be ready to tax people at higher levels so that the low level are taken care of.
The middle level.
You're an accountant.
Yes, yes.
Okay? So this is a 2.5% motor vehicle.
Yes.
Let's be practical.
Which is a proposal.
If I buy, it's a proposal.
Yes.
If I buy a vehicle that is worth 700,000,
yes,
the normal Kenyan.
Yes.
Okay? At 2.5%, that is about 17,000.
17,000, yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Now remember, the capping is 5,000 and 100,000 at the
5,000 to 100, yes.
Yes. So if I buy a vehicle that is 40 million shillings,
yes,
I'm expected to pay a maximum of 100,000 shillings.
Yes.
So that is 0.25%.
Yes.
But for the hustler who bought the 700,000 vehicle, his bill is 17,500.
Yes.
How is that fair?
What I'm referring to, Trevor, let us come to 17,000, because that is where middle level. This is the middle level. Let's say 700,000 to 1.5 million. That is the middle level. That will be between 17,000 to like 25,000. This money is not paid monthly. It is paid once, and it is paid annually. For 12 months. The government has maintained for you the roads. The government has ensured that there are traffic police on the road to protect you, whether at night or at daytime. The government has ensured that there's pipeline to move petrol from where it comes from to where you will need it in Busia or anywhere. That is the duty of government. Where then does the owner of the car come in to support the government in facilitating this? As I tell you, today we have more than 2.2 million vehicles in Kenya. These people need the road. You understand the congestion on our roads. Even if you go to Nairobi roads, currently there's a lot of recarpeting everywhere. That thing is done by money. Trevor, the vehicles, even if they're taxed, it is not the only proposal in that bill. This is the problem with our opposition, and this is the problem with our media. They focus on one thing, and then they interfere with the whole good thing. Because this finance bill has a lot of areas which are very good. There are so many areas. Why are you not talking about pension, which has been increased? Taxes has been increased. The amount has been increased. Yes, so let this part, if there's a problem with taxation on bread, let that come to public participation. Let them go and say, no, these other parts are good, but this one of bread is bad. This one of the motor vehicle is not good. Reduce it even to 1%, because it will have to be taxed, I'm telling you. So let it be reduced even to 1%, but let them not say it's not supposed to be taxed. Are you telling us that Kenyans Kenyans should not be taxed.
All right, Jared.
We should be taxed.
Let me firstly, and I told you you need a lot of patience. This regime is pro-rich but very anti-poor. You have given a very classical example that somebody buys a vehicle for 40 million, and you know, most of them have those fuel guzzlers on the roads. Going for that amount of money, they only pay 0.025%, which comes to 100,000. Yet, a real hustler that has bought a vehicle worth 700,000 shillings would pay 17,000, which then translates to 2.5%. So the higher you go, the better in this regime. And that is why in the last financial proposals, which became law, they actually created tax exemptions on choppers. Because who can afford a chopper? It is them. So if you are not belonging, if you are not in that class, then you are off their radar. They punish you. And punishing you properly, they will. They ask me, how do I help this government? Firstly, I'm not part of the Economic Council. And number two, when this government fails, I am happy. Because then, as the alternative government, we sit therefore in a vantage position to clinch presidency. But let me give them a free advice, if they want to listen.
Pro bono.
Pro bono. There is what we call economies of scale. Economies of scale would be, for example, you buy in bulk and you sell in smaller profits so that you don't get so much, but because you're dealing in bulk, at the end of the day, you have the requisite amount of money in terms of profits. Governments never build economies. Private sector does. So how do you then enhance private sector to do much more so that through economies of scale, because government gets its taxes not from the same government, but from the private sector, those who do businesses, those who trade in various commodities. So lower taxation, lower those taxes, and by that you are going to attract more investors. And you're also going to allow those who are already trading in several merchandise put more money, even go into banks to borrow, so that they can expand their businesses. As the government creates that enabling environment, people trade and the government gets even much more money. But they are being told somewhere here, not far from where we sit, that just overtax people. Whether those investors want to flee the country, let them go. Whether we are shipping jobs abroad, it's okay, but tax as much as you can to all those who are under that bracket, Trevor. Now, many people enter into agreements with their insurance companies. Not everybody pays cash to buy insurance policy in a year. In fact, over 90% of people would enter into agreement and say, give me the insurance policy, but at the end of this month, I'm giving you 5,000. The following month, I will be giving you 100,000. Like that, until you finish. That is the agreement across all the insurance companies by the insured or policy holders. Now, when you tell these insurance companies that in a matter of 5 days, you must remit the motor vehicle tax, failure to which you will be penalized. Now, what happens to some of us who cannot pay in cash but must enter into agreements with insurance companies? You're putting us off that business. But again, ask yourself in retrospect, who will bear this burden? It is the end user. Correct. So Kenyans must be ready to pay more on fares, whether they like it or not, because that is what this regime is asking them to do. Now, the new budget policy statement, which is before us, is seeking to increase collection by 324 billion through ordinary revenue and 41 billion shillings more on other levies. And William Ruto has so chosen to look at all directions and overtax anything and everybody so that he can raise 324 billion shillings. Trevor, tell me, and we live in this country, Ruto is now in office for about 2 years. He's a few months shy of 2 years in office. indicate to me any flagship project this Ruto has ever initiated since he got into office. The president who has ever, fleeced Kenyans by way of taxation is William Ruto. So ask yourself, where are all these billions going to? Korusoin Dam, which could have resolved our flooding menace in Nyando constituency, was terminated when Aurora and Kemwarer, with very questionable conduct, were given a nod to proceed. So you ask yourself, even though Kenyans are being overtaxed, what is going to happen? On housing levy, for example, they intend to delete Section 54, where savers, those who save their money, will now have to pay taxes each time they choose to withdraw that money. This is money that you're putting for your house. But there was that Section 54, which gave us a window to take back your money as and when you deem necessary. But now that money will be subjected to taxation so that you don't remove it. You have it there so that William Ruto can use it as much as he wants. That's another problem that must be addressed. Now, they are seeking to redefine Section 2 of the Finance Act to now put even associations like the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce, like the family trusts, to also be put within the tax bracket. How would you tax KOTU, for example, on remissions by people who have already been taxed? So, and how do you tax Chamber of Commerce, for example? So this is just a government out to look for money. I don't know whether they have been told that part of heaven needs some money to be completed to allow Jesus Christ to come back. Because the rate at which these people mop up funds without any credible or tangible project in the country is alarming, my friend, Honorable Trevor. Now, they are intending to also move taxes on bread from tax exempt to zero rated. What does that therefore mean? That all the inputs around bread and unga, where people have always claimed refunds on taxation, that is not going to happen anymore. And therefore Kenyans will have 10 shillings plus over and above the prices of unga that they are getting at the moment. Yet on the converse again, they're giving you fake fertilizer so that you don't get enough yield, but they're also increasing the amount of unga. So what a fallacy we are being subjected to. Before I finish, we still intend to help this government bring the cost of living down, whether they like it or not.
How?
Okango talked about the mobile money transfer. Remember, last year, they moved that excise duty from 12% to 15%.
Yeah.
In the current budget policy statement, they're moving it from 15% to 20%.
Yeah.
Meaning, they have known that Kenyans use a lot of mobile money, to ship goods and to ship resources.
Yeah.
So they want to fleece Kenyans by taxing them some more. So as a parliament, we are called upon to do what we can under the circumstances. In parliament?
Just a quick one.
We have always fought, and fighting we will. Oh my goodness, and we are good at that. And not just fighting for the sake of it, by giving Kenyans cogent reasons as to why we oppose some of those things. Otherwise, we don't want to be destructive.
Yeah.
And as my friend Okango did allude to, this country belongs to all of us. Its failure is our failure.
Yes.
But Ruto's failure is Ruto's failure. Not collective.
What do you expect when this comes to Parliament?
Well, this is going to the National Assembly, and I think the members of the National Assembly are better placed to discuss that, Trevor. But sitting here, I think sometimes we need to be factual with what we tell Kenyans. Honorable Okello says that Ruto has collected billions and there is no flagship project to it. I think he's being economical with the truth because we know that all over the country, if you go, Trevor, affordable housing and they have started appreciating it. Like Ken said, affordable housing is happening everywhere. I can see it in my county, in other counties. And of course, I do not want to talk about the benefits of this particular program or project has, because this is something that has been conversed upon, that has been talked about in very many talk shows and in many other meetings. So that is something that, of course, you cannot ignore. Trevor, there are things that this government has done that, of course, in under 2 years, so many things have been done. If you talk about education, Trevor, this government has employed a record 56,000 teachers to address the shortage of teachers in our learning institutions in just 1 year. And Trevor, I can tell you that 20,000 more teachers will be employed by the TSC this year.
Okay.
Trevor, I can tell you there was a big backlog of teachers that had not been promoted. I may not have the numbers that have been promoted because the exercise has just been concluded. And I am aware that a further 1 billion Kenya shillings has been allocated to CTSC to promote more teachers this year. And Trevor, you must appreciate the role that, the contribution that better education makes to even the economy and our people. So this is not something that you can ignore and say that billions have been collected and are not going anywhere. Trevor, if you go around the country, I don't know whether Honorable Okello has started a digital hub in his constituency. Digital hubs are being established.
I do have.
All over the country, and this is something that...
Uhuru gave me one.
This is something, Trevor, that, of course, that is being done by the national government. Yeah. And I have no quarrel with what Uhuru did, but I think this is a program that is under Kenya Kwanza government. And this is something that is going to contribute to employment of our young people. And Trevor, when our young people get employed, if they start earning amounts that are beyond the minimum, you know, not everybody is taxed. Of course, the way pay, for example, goes up to a particular amount of income, it is tax exempt. Then it progresses that way. It is progressive. Yeah. So if somebody now starts earning more, whether they are youth or not, but they reach the income bracket that is taxable, then of course, Trevor, it would be unfair, like Fred suggested, to say that young people should not be taxed. Only young people who are earning or will be earning amounts that are above the, or that are within the taxable limit will be taxed. Okay. And so we do not want our young people to remain being jobless so that they may not pay tax. We would want our young people to get employment, digital jobs, and that is why these hubs are happening, get employment and be taxed after they have earned. Okay. I do not know whether anybody would want our young people to remain unemployed so that they do not pay taxes. I would rather our young people are facilitated to be able to get jobs, digital or otherwise, and then they pay tax once they reach that level, like I've said, that is the level of income that is taxable. Okay. That is how the principle of taxation operates.
All right, Dokango.
And just before Fred comes in, I think I want I love Honorable Okello very much. I told you we are in the same team of athletics. Yeah. He must avoid, even when we are doing politics, from being blasphemous. When he says, I don't know whether, he's wondering whether there's a part of heaven that he needs, please, just avoid that line. Blasphemy is dangerous. Thank you. I love this.
Well, I know what is blasphemy and what borders on blasphemy.
Pastor,
I'm a Christian.
We'll give him an opportunity to preach to us because I love his teachings. But having said that, Trevor, it is clear that majority of the views from the public, just by assessment of the feedback, you can see Kenyans are unhappy about this taxation. There are proposals, we agree. But if the Finance Bill 2024 is to pass as is, then I can tell you that it will be worse than the current Finance Act that we have. Even the ink on that Finance Act for 2023 has not dried. Already, we have seen another wave of proposed taxes coming our way, we must give our views within the window that has been given. I think the deadline is 28th. I want to ask every Kenyan, submit your views. If they reject your views, then you know what to do next, because you have got that constitutional right. And number two, even in this motor vehicle tax that we're talking about, there are those category of vehicles that have been exempted, and they largely belong to the government, other than the ambulances from private hospitals. The KDF, Kenya Police, NIS, those are exempt, you know? So really, how are you going to punish the lowly placed, the middle class? And Ken talked about low middle class. I don't think in this country we have middle class anymore. That middle class have been wiped out by Kenya Kwanza regime. It is no longer there. And lastly, we know, even as we talk about this finance bill, there's one ticking bomb that maybe if we had time would have talked about, the revenue allocation bill. You have seen the bill has now gone to mediation. You know why? Because majority of Senator Nyutu's colleagues have consistently denied the county government money. The criteria of dividing this revenue also demands that it must ensure adequate resources to enable the county government do their functions allocated to them as per Schedule 4. They have never done that. They keep on denying them money. That is another way of killing devolution in this country. And very lastly, so that my good friend Ken finishes, we know, Trevor.
No, I will finish.
Yeah, we know, Trevor, that Kenya Kwanza regime is extravagant. They're extravagant to the extent that they want to tax more and more to continue being extravagant, going by what they do. They keep on employing people who we don't know their roles to advise them on what we don't know, but we are telling them there are three things they must do urgently. Number one, they must moderate the expenditure and ensure that they reduce their travel. They travel a lot. You wake up in the morning, they travel. You go to sleep, they travel. So they must moderate their travel by 50% in all departments across. Number two, they earn so much allowances. What is called daily subsistence allowance, if you like, you call per diem. They must lower that also. And lastly, they must reduce the size of government. The size of this government, you wake up in the morning, somebody has been appointed. You wake up in the morning, somebody is appointed. And they say they are suffering from issues of wage bill. They even had a wage bill conference and told us that people who should go home because they are earning money illegally, they should refund. We have not seen that happen. We want to ask Kenya Kwanza regime. We are members of this country by right. We know that when you fail, we fail. But we have the duty to tell you that you are going to fail so that you don't fail. President William Ruto, listen to us. Listen to the people who put you in office. Those people that you put in office, the hustler, Mamamboga, Mtu Mkokoteni, have said, don't tax them more. You have taxed them enough. The belt that they were to tighten has collapsed. It has cut. Please, if there is anything that you can do to benefit the people of Kenya this time, in your second year, Mr. President, is to ensure that this finance bill do not punish the people of Kenya. Okay. That is the request we put to you, Mr. President.
Trevor, I know it becomes very difficult for an opposition to come and clap for the government. There's no day. In fact, I don't want to refer to them as minority. They are supposed to be opposition. That is why we have opposition to keep the government at check. And when you listen carefully, and I wanted to be confirmed from this particular debate today, that Honorable Jared Okello has said that when this government fails, he is happy.
Yes.
And I really want the people of Nyando to know that since Jared Okello said the government has failed to take food to them, he is happy. I want the people of Nyando to know that if they are suffering floods and Jared Okello said the government has not done anything there, he is happy. So the people of Nyando must know that he's happy with their suffering because he has declared it on national television. But I can tell you that when Okango refers to alternative budget, in this country, there was a day we have ever had people's president. They were told that there's somebody called people's president. My friend Okango, there can never be people's budget. There will never be any budget from anybody. The budget will always be one. Coming from the cabinet, taken to parliament, to public participation, and then passed into appropriation bill and then appropriation law. As to flagship projects, Trevor, the government has so many flagship projects. This government of William Ruto is the one which has enabled everybody, including Okango, to be able to access internet every time to see members of the government traveling. Because you can only see those things via internet because of digitization, modernization of our digital platform, and the rest. Even everything we do is nowadays on social media. I'm very sure even my people are viewing us even through different digital platforms simply because of the spirit of digitalization. In my today's conclusive remark in respect of this, one, nobody will ever be happy for them to be taxed. And I want to tell the president that let us look forward to having innovative means of getting taxes from Kenyans as one of the source of revenue while we develop other alternative sources. Okay. Because they don't have options, they always say they don't want government to collect, yet they don't have solutions. The most important thing which has happened to this country, and I have to say it, that God has given us a clever president. Mm-hmm. He's not only a clever president, but he's also a courageous president. He will look at you on the face and tell you like he has looked.
Snippets of sycophants.
I'll give you a chance of response.
I am saying, I'm justifying my point that the president is courageous because he will look at Kenyans on their face and tell them the truth and will not hide behind subsidies like Uhuru Kenyatta used to do. Uhuru decided not to face Kenyans and he put Kenyans on subsidies. He didn't face Kenyans tell Kenyans on the face that if we go on subsidies way, we are going to have a lot of debt to pay. And you saw when we were on this debate the other time, why we had to borrow the last Eurobond was to pay another Eurobond. And the president doesn't want Kenya to go the debt way. You cannot live in your house and you live in a borrowed life. You live you cut your coat according to your size. Kenyans must agree that if we don't want to suffer problems of debts and continuous borrowing, we must accept to cut our coat according to our size. We must accept to be taxed to the extent that it is innovative, acceptable, and Parliament has an overall duty of confirming whether Kenyans have agreed in their representative capacity of Kenyans in Parliament.
All right, Thank you. You adversely mentioned, so I'll give you a chance to respond, and then that's the end of it because there's a question coming in. Yes. He said that you're happy when the people of Nyanda.
He said it. Unless he's withdrawing.
Well,
yes,
you know,
he's withdrawing.
Trevor, it is also true that the more you ignore Ken, the more peace you enjoy. First things first, I did indicate that the food distribution process for flood victims in Nyando has been thwarted by regional leaders, officials in government who come from Luo Nyanza and are working in connivance with certain councillors on the ground and the government representatives on the ground. Food is being hoarded, people are hungry, food is being sold, and I have indicated, including the names that my brother Nyotu challenged me to, in my letter to the DCI, copied to the president, and I expect heads to roll. I expect, because that is criminal, I expect drastic actions to be taken. Look, Uhuru Kenyatta, you know, the best president Kenya will ever have, started Koru Soin Dam so that the water upstream, which creates the havoc in the lower basin of Nyando, could be arrested, and only adequate quantities are let to flow all the way to Nyakach, where you will represent. So when Ruto took over, and they'd already done, you know, compensation to the landowners, and work had already begun, Ruto gets into office, and the first project he did for Luo Nyanza, where Kennedy Ondiek also comes from, was to cancel the tender, 19 billion shilling tender for Koru Soin Dam. And they still expect me to sing.
Well, the president is doing a lot of projects in Nyando.
Now, Ruto mentioned something that I think shouldn't go unchallenged. From his statement, he has said he made a declaration to his cabinet to cut back on recurrent expenditure by 30%. 30% of recurrent expenditure in government departments is a lot of money. And we are asking ourselves, if Ruto now has 30% recurrent expenditure in his hands, what is he doing therefore with that money to cushion Kenyans against adversities? What he has done is to increase more taxes, subject Kenyans to more suffering, mop up more funds. I don't know whether he's making, a war chest for 2027. We have not even declared who our candidate will be. But Ruto is busy mopping up money for 2027 instead of serving this country. Lastly, we had an election, the only credible election Kenya has ever had, only in 2002. The late President Mwai Kibaki won by such a landslide margin. Uhuru Kenyatta, even before all results trickled in, had just to throw in the towel. He conceded defeat honorably, and I saw William Ruto standing next to him. So that was a very credible election because we had a very, very popular candidate at the time. Ruto is not even popular. And in fact, the margin was only 200,000 shillings. So you can tell. But even Kibaki, with that 200,000 votes, I'm sorry. Even with that huge margin of difference Kibaki had, 2 years later, in 2005, he lost a referendum to Raila Odinga. In 2007, he lost the election to Raila Odinga. Remember, this is somebody who was extraordinarily popular, and Kenyans were actually voted by the UN as the most optimistic people in the world, not in Africa, in the world. But Kibaki lost 2005 and lost 2007 elections. We have one who only won by a slim majority, very slim, which was also concocted. So what is going to happen to this guy in 2027?
How does
God bless you.
How does unpopular win?
Let's see what the people
How does
say.
unpopular person
Yes, please, because he has advanced.
How can unpopular person win?
President. Kindly allow me.
You are not the president.
Let us.
But this guy is not the president.
President, but
Yeah, but I got a chance because I was advancedly mentioned.
Jared, you had your
Well,
minute.
you can call Ruto.
You had your time.
Government first.
Please, please. You know,
Yes,
he has said something that
Must be
should
taken
not,
care of.
it must not go unchallenged.
Yes.
When he says that His Excellency the President is mopping up money for 2027,
Yeah, what?
please, we are discussing about taxes here.
Yeah.
The President does not collect taxes, and the taxes do not go to the President's pocket. It is collected by KRA, it goes to the National Treasury.
Okay. Yeah.
Please,
Clear.
it is very important that we
But
keep
again,
the President
how does
out of this
unpopular-
kind of money.
Let's see what you're saying. Honorable Lillian Sioi says, just like the phoenix from the ashes, President Ruto is presiding over the rebuilding of our nation. We might feel a pinch now, but after all plans are put in place, our nation will be a paradise for all to live in. Okay? Remy Butia says, as a country, we should aspire to have progressive tax policies that drive innovation, increase investments, and enable us to take advantage of various opportunities for our nation's prosperity. Okay? Okelo Mwalimu says, any tax regime that oppresses the poor is more dangerous to the progress of a developing nation than an atomic bomb. KK regime should focus on reducing wastages rather than oppressing the poor. Motor vehicle tax is an extension of hustlers versus dynasties narrative. Okay? Frank Orinde says the government is hell-bent to increase taxes against a thin income Kenyans earn. To add salt to the injury, all we witness is extravagant government expenditure. Look at the allocation to State House renovation and the pavilion. Were they a priority? We are heading the wrong direction. Okay? And he says Singapore has invested heavily in public transport and implement strict policies to discourage vehicle ownership because of the limited size of land. Okay? Kalu says President Ruto's pledge for annual tax hikes raises concerns on citizens' burden. While vital for stability, excessive taxation risks stifling growth. Opposition's call to oppose reflects a crucial debate on fiscal policy's impact. Peter says, we agree that any government of the day collects revenue through taxes, but the issue of waking up and introducing imaginary and punitive taxes must be condemned strongly. Punda mechoka. Okay? Gabi says Ruto is comparing us with France by saying he intends to raise the country average tax to 22% from 14%. Yes, France is at 45%, but tell us, what is their wage bill? What's their income per capita? what are the opportunities the government provides as opposed to Kenya's. Okello says again, once a finance bill passes, more Kenyans will lose jobs as the cost of doing businesses will soar. This government should benchmark on prudent ways of spending revenue and drop insistent appetite for taxes. Even those who sang Si Uchawi Ni Maombi can't remember how they prayed. Okay. Ben says, good morning. I pay a third-party insurance of 5,000 per annum. How is it logical to pay a tax equivalent to my annual premiums from 5K to 10K? Really? Why cap the minimum and not the maximum? Okay. All right, that's where we leave it for now, gentlemen. Thank you so much for making time. Honorable Joe Nyutu, Senator Muranga, Honorable Jared Okello, Member of Parliament Jando, and Honorable Kennedy Ndieki, UDA Coordinator South Nyanza, is a former MCA, by the way, and Frederick Okango, Secretary Political Affairs, Azimio. Thank you very much for making time this morning, and thank you all for the feedback. This is something that will go to public participation. Give your views, and we'll be here to tell you how it all goes. All right, bye for now. My name is Trevor Mbija. Cooking Tips is coming up next. See you right.